Or switching gears now to the ETF space and specifically how to use ETFs to gain exposure in international markets. For more on that, Alex Douglas, Managing Director of Monex Securities, joins me in studio. Alex, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, James.
Look, I don't think it's any great surprise or any secret, the use of ETFs. So we might delve a little bit beyond the fact that they give you exposure. Where in particular? I mean, we talk a lot about Australians being very domestically focused.
Very much.
The push into internationally, surely that's got to be one of the biggest advantages when it comes to ETFs, not having to go direct stock level to markets, being able to get that exposure via ETFs.
That's right. And as you point out, Australians have got perhaps the worst home country bias of anyone in the world, any group of investors. So there are different ways you can do it. If you just want general exposure to the offshore markets, you can find an ETF that'll do that, or you can choose a specific area or market segment that you're interested in. So if we pick a locally listed one, for example, Beta Shares came out with a new ETF late last year called Quality, and the ticker symbol is QLTY. Now this is an ETF that focuses on quality companies outside of Australia. They look for companies that have got a high return on equity, they're profitable, they've got stable earnings and fairly low leverage. And so that's the type of company that they're looking for specifically, but outside of Australia. So you're getting good exposure to some of the big tech names that we know, but it's not just restricted to tech stocks, that they'll have a look at anything that might fit into that criteria.
When we're looking at Australians looking at offshore exposure and using it, using the avenue, the opportunity through ETFs, do they tend to do it with locally listed ETFs? I mean, would that be a good way for people to certainly start when they're looking at using that sort of an investment?
Certainly the ETFs that are available locally are becoming more diverse. There's more choice, so people are able to invest in a local ETF and get some exposure offshore. But if you want something specific and if you're the particular market you're interested in, so you look around the world recently and there's been a lot of turmoil, a lot of volatility. But there's one market that really stands out that has been very strong, is Brazil. They've just gone from strength to strength. Late, last year, November, December, when the rest of the world was having these big corrections, Brazil just powered on through. Now they've got a new president over there, very right wing, bit of a hardliner. Bit of a divisive character, but he is promising all sorts of reforms and the market seems to like it. He's very much a free market person, going for a lot of privatisation, looking to reform the pension system, so to cut their debt. And so Brazil has been doing really well. So there are, internationally, there are some ETFs that focus on Brazil. So perhaps the most heavily traded would be one in the US, that's ticker symbol EWZ.
ETFs have become a huge part of equity markets. They're actually quite dominant now as far as movements in equity markets. There are some who question the fact that they haven't really been tested in big downturns. What is it going to do to liquidity? What is it going to do in terms of exacerbating falls? Your thoughts on some of the arguments, pros and cons, when it comes to ETFs?
Look, I think as you say, maybe it needs to be tested before we'll really know for sure. One thing that I do think that people need to be aware of when they're investing in ETFs is to actually dig behind, actually read some of the material about the ETF, because some are leveraged, some are negative, and so they'll do the opposite of what the market does. So there's more to it than just buying an ETF. People do need to do a little bit of research and understand what it is they're buying.
And are you seeing a big increase? My understanding is that we've seen almost exponential growth in terms of Australian take-up in ETFs, but from a low base compared to globally. But over 2018 into 2019, it's plateaued the level of growth. It's still growing. What are you seeing? What are you seeing in terms of the take-up and the interest in ETFs?
Well, from where I sit, we personally are, we are seeing more interest, but specifically more interest in using ETFs to get this offshore exposure. And across asset classes, I mean, is it just international equities, or are people looking at commodities? You can do gold, you can do oil, you can do bulks if you like. Mostly what I'm seeing is equities focused, but definitely there is an increase in interest.
And how do you see it fitting into a broader portfolio? Is it a case of, we speak to a lot of fund managers, even the active managers, who think for your average retail investor, passive perhaps is a good strategy, and then have your alternative asset classes, your active fund manager, your managed funds off to the side. But a bulk for someone certainly starting in markets, passive perhaps is a good place to start.
I think diversification is the key there. You mentioned all those different areas. It would be silly to put all your eggs in one basket. So yes, an ETF is a great base. And then if you want particular exposure to different areas, to artificial intelligence or electric cars or commodities, then you go out and invest in that directly.
Do you ever get surprised by just the sheer diversity of products you can now actually invest in via ETFs? I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. I think it's a very good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex Douglas, appreciate you coming in this morning. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you.